So Verdansk is back and Warzone is finally feeling great again. Whether you've been with us for the last couple of years through Al Mazrah and Urzikstan, or you're just coming back to see what Verdansk looks like in 2025, this video I'm going to run through all the best settings you're going to want to have for controller and in-game to make the most of this new game and the new Omni movement, which is the first time we're seeing that inside Verdansk. I'll jump through all the in-game settings first, and then I'll show you how you compare that with the controller settings, particularly for the DualSense Edge controller. So let's jump into it. So first off, you're going to want to jump over to the controller settings, and this is going to be a bit of a personal preference one, but I play tactical, so that swaps the melee and the slide button. So I slide with R3 and it means I use my left paddle to melee. So I've just found that works better for me. I was kind of accidentally meleeing when I had it as R3, so tactical is the way forward. Then on the horizontal and vertical stick sensitivity, I'm at 1.4 across horizontal and vertical. This equates to roughly about what would have been a 6 back in the previous game. So if you are coming in after not playing Warzone for a few years, this is kind of looking at roughly a 6 or a 7. Kind of that's where you want to sit. You can have simplified controls preset turned off, as well as the low motor strain. The controller vibrations, you definitely want to have this off because this is just going to shake your controller and potentially throw off your aim. Same with the trigger effect if you're using the DualSense controllers. That's just going to get super annoying. Then we get into dead zones. So again, this is going to be a slightly personal point, and it does depend on how old your controller is, and also there is a little bit of opinion on this. I know they'll get some people up in the comments below, but I have my left stick turned right down to 0, so that actually means that I have a little bit of stick drift, and this is to make sure that the rotational aim assist is implemented without having to move my left stick. Some people say this doesn't work for them. If it ain't for you, then don't do it. But for me, yeah, I like to make sure that aim assist is kicking in straight away. And I have my left stick max, so the dead zone is pulled right in, so I don't have to pull the stick super far. I'm getting the full range of motion with only 60% of the input. Now I have put a little bit of dead zone on my right stick, as you'll see if I do a little test here. I want to make sure that there is very little, if any, twitching on the test here. So that's why I've got this set to 2, and you can bring a little bit of dead zone in on the max. So I've got that set to 90. It just feels good. And then finally, you want to make sure that the trigger dead zones are pulled down to 0 in game. So obviously you can set this in the DualSense Edge settings as well, which I'll show you later on in the video. But if you're not using this and you don't have the ability to change the settings directly on your controller, you'll definitely want to make sure these are both set to 0 so that the slightest input will engage the trigger. Then moving over to aiming. So I play inverted. Not that many people do, so you'll probably be on standard, but definitely just play to the way that you play there. On the aiming advanced settings, you want to jump in and make sure that the ADS sensitivity transitioning is instant, so that means you'll be snappy when you're looking down ADS. You don't need to worry too much about third person. And I've got the aim response curve set to dynamic. I've had this set at dynamic for ages, and the way that this pairs in with the DualSense Edge settings, I found this to be super sticky. Again, there'll probably be people in the comments below saying that, oh, the curves don't combine with the DualSense Edge settings. They do. I'll leave a full deep dive video to Daniel ZH in the description box below where he shows that the curves do stack. So yeah, I've pulled the aim response curve down, but I found this to be, after loads and loads of testing, this combined with the DualSense Edge settings, the best way to go. Even if you don't have a Pro controller, I find that dynamic gives you just that slight bit more precision at longer range. Then I've also got some custom sensitivity per zoom turned on. So my ADS multiplier for low zoom, so this is looking through things like red dots or iron sights, I pulled this down to about 55 or 0.55, so this just really slows it down. Black Ops is probably going to feel a little bit quicker if you're coming back to the game from older versions, so you might find that your aim is going a bit wonky, but anything above that I have left as 1, so you don't need to worry too much about that. You just have to get used to sniping, and that's kind of when we get into these realms here. Target aim assist, obviously we want on. We want to make the most of aim assist, and ADS aim assist is on, but it's not too applicable to Warzone or multiplayer. It's only in the campaign and zombies. Motion sensor behavior, so this is like gyro and stuff like that, have that bad boy turned off. Then you want to make sure you've got tactical sprint assist turned on. So this can be on or off or in assist. So this would have been, I guess, what would have been auto tac sprint. Now you can, for some reason why you'd want to do this, set a sprint assist delay, but have that set to 0, so there's 0 delay, and then that's essentially like what auto tac sprint was in older ones. You also want to have a bit of assist on the sideways and backwards sprint, so this is obviously new to Omni movement, so make sure you got those on and you'll feel super fluid. In terms of the mantle assist, you want that turned off. Same for the crouch assist, you don't want to be accidentally crouching in the middle of a gunfight when you're trying to sprint away. And corner slice, so this will just help you peek round corners slightly. It's marginal, doesn't affect gameplay too much to be honest, but I've got this turned on. Next up is slide and dive behavior. So I've got mine set to hybrid. You can have it set to slide or dive only. That means if you've got it dive only, then you actually won't be able to slide, and same vice versa for slide only. Or you can do tap to slide and tap to dive, so that'll just be one tap input to slide. But with hybrids, you can essentially have best of both worlds. So to be able to dive in hybrid, you need to be sprinting and then you tap the slide button and then you'll dive. It does take a little bit of getting used to, but once you're there, it's definitely worth it. So for the automatic airborne mantle, you want this turned off. You just don't really want any kind of auto mantling on because it's just going to get you killed in gunfights and be super annoying. But you can have sprint restore on and slide maintain sprint. So that means you can carry on sprinting and it's going to help with your slide cancelling and just generally the overall fluidity of your movement. You want to make sure you've got the parachute automatic behavior turned off, so you don't want to be floating down to the ground super slowly because you're just going to get absolutely laced out of the air. Mantle cancels reload is off because again that's just going to be super annoying. And then if we jump into the advanced movement behaviors, so sprint tactical is toggle, auto move forward definitely not. The auto door peek, again you've got that turned off because if you're trying to be a little bit covert around the back of a door and you know there's an enemy on the other side, if you walk up to the door you're going to auto peek it and basically be like, hiya, you're dead, GG's. You want to have the ground mantle off. The tactical sprint activation is double tap and it'll be single tap to sprint. Plunging underwater is trigger. This is now less of an issue because there's a lot less water in Verdansk. There's a little bit that runs around the outside, but compared to Urzikstan, you are going to be using or being in water a lot less. Sprint door dash you want on so you can burst through those doors to catch your enemies by surprise. Vehicle behaviors, you don't need to worry too much about this. I've kind of left everything default here. Then we move over to combat. So you want to make sure your aim down sight behavior is hold, so that is holding down the left trigger to aim down sight. Tactical stance is on toggle. Tactical stance is ADS and down. I just found that was kind of default and it works for me. The weapon mount I've got as double ADS, so by default this will be ADS and melee, but I just found that I was randomly hitting melee in gunfights and I'd find myself mounting and that was me dead. So double ADS feels like a more deliberate action and has worked for me, and I've used this in the last couple of Call of Duties. Dedicated melee weapon activation is hold melee. Body shield, you want to prioritise finishing move. The body shield is a bit of a gimmick to be honest, and we're all out here trying to do executions, so I would prioritise finishing move. Armour plate behaviour, got apply all because if you want to do it one by one you need to keep pressing triangle on a PS5 controller, so I've got it set to apply all. C4 detonation, if you throw more than one, I want them all to blow up at once. Equipment behaviour is hold, manual fire is press. And into the advanced settings, the most important one that you want here is to have the interact reload behavior as prioritize interact. Obviously they brought back floating loot to this version of Verdansk, which is amazing, so you want to make sure that you'll be able to pick up all of these items as they come out of chests super quickly. You don't want to tap to reload because it's going to mean that you're going to have to hold to pick up weapons, pick up ammo, pick up plates, and it's just going to get you killed. So definitely make sure you've got that set to prioritize interact. Sprint cancels reload is definitely off. If you've got the tactical sprint assist on, you're going to find yourself cancelling the reload constantly, and that is just no bueno. Akimbo behaviour, I like to be able to shoot left and right separately, so you can have that set as independent or paired for me, I prefer the option. ADS stick swap is off, and depleted ammo weapon switch is on, just so you can get a super quick weapon switch if you are completely out of ammo on your AR, for example, or switch to your SMG. So that is the controller settings. Now we'll jump into the graphics settings. Not too much to worry about in here. You can keep this on efficiency and gamma and brightness. You'll have done these settings when you set up in-game. If you move over to quality, you want to make sure the world motion blur is turned off, as well as the weapon motion blur and the depth of field, because all of these are basically going to affect the amount of game that you can see, and it's just going to make it harder to hit your targets, to be honest. The fidelity cast, you want to make sure you've got it turned on. I've got it set to about 75, and so what this does is just sharpens the screen a little bit. You can go too far and it will start to look a little bit like crunchy around the edges. I found that 75 is a pretty good middle ground. Onto on-demand texture streaming, I've got this set to optimize. This will be what the textures are being downloaded from. This will depend on your internet. If you've got good internet, then definitely have it as optimized. Then we move over to view. Motion reduction preset is turned off. So this motion reduction is for people who get kind of visual sickness. I don't get it on this, so I've got that turned off. If you find yourself getting a bit nauseous while playing the game, then you might want to try turning this one on. Now this is a bit of a joy to have on Verdansk, but we never had the field of view slider on the original Verdansk. Now we do. I've got this pushed up to 120, but this is kind of a personal preference one. A lot of people kind of have it between 110 and 120. Where we were back in the original Verdansk was about 80 or 90. I can't remember exactly which one it was, but anyway, we're getting a lot more screen in this version. ADS field of view is affected, and weapon field of view is default. You don't need to worry too much about third person, and like I say, I've left kind of vehicle field of view and all the settings as default on that. Then you can move over to the interface section and move across to gameplay HUD. And this will have a few important settings just to make sure you're getting the most out of the HUD and all that it has to offer. So first off, if you jump into the safe area, you want to make sure you're bringing the safe area right in. So not up to the edge of the screen, which it does suggest, but you actually want to bring it in as far as it will come. And that's because the minimap will sit further in, so it's less distance for your eye to travel on the monitor or TV or whatever you're playing on. And so that just gives you a few extra milliseconds in gunfights or when you're kind of trying to dismantle a team. The less distance your eye has to travel, the better. So that will just bring all of that in. Minimap shape, you want this set as square. Default, I think, is still round, but why they have that, I don't know. You actually get more surface area on the square, so you can actually see more of the map. Minimap rotation is on, radar off, compass type horizontal. All of this is kind of fairly default. In-game texture I've got turned off just because people are toxic. Then we get into the crosshairs, so this is quite a good one to help improve your gameplay. So you can have the crosshair turned on, static, center dot, or off. I have it turned on, but if you go into show more, you can see how the crosshair dot looks, so you can have it off or on. You can also change the scale of it, and I have this larger, so it kind of gives you something to focus on when you're in game, and just obviously just shows where you're shooting. And the crosshair spread is on. You can change the opacity if it's too heavy, but what is definitely a new thing and really great to do is change the crosshair color. So I've picked a color that is super bright, that I know is going to stand out in nearly every situation, just so I can see it. So it's super clean and it pops. Also kind of fits with the channel brand, which is nice, but you can choose whatever color you want here. I've gone for this sort of like gazzy blue. Then down to hit markers, you obviously want hit markers on and damage hit markers on. And then we move down to the widget visibility. So this is kind of how the content looks on your HUD. So the weapons in the bottom right hand and your team in the bottom left. You can start to change the opacity so they don't take up quite as much space. But I would say that you want to have the weapon and equipment information at 100% opacity. You need to be able to see this content super quickly. Whereas player and streak toast, you can drop the opacity to 30 for this, I would say. Elimination ID, you can keep that as 100 because that just appears when you die. But medals and notifications and all those things, like when you hit a headshot or a long shot or kind of complete certain challenges, all those things pop up and get super distracting. So I drop that down to 30 just so it doesn't take over the whole of your screen, because if that happens mid gunfire then it's super annoying. But then you can leave the rest to 100. So that was the settings in game. Now we'll take a look at the specific DualSense Edge controller settings on the PS5 software. So first off, we'll jump into the customized button assignments. So I've actually got all of the buttons set to their default positions, and the paddle I've got set to circle, so that means that I'm meleeing in Warzone, and the right paddle I've got set to X, which is for jump. So yeah, I don't have to take my hands off the joysticks to be able to jump, which is a real bonus in Warzone. Then if we move over to stick sensitivity, so obviously with this Pro controller you can change the sensitivity and dead zone for both the left and the right stick, which is super nice. For Warzone I've left the left stick to default, but on the right stick you can set the sensitivity curve to precise. Like I said earlier in the video, these two sensitivity curves, the dynamic in-game and the precise on the controller, do combine. Make sure you do check out Daniel's video in the description box below, but I found this has been the perfect sweet spot to make your aim super sticky. So the other options you could go for is dynamic, but this almost gives you a precise dynamic curve. Obviously I think you'd see less difference if you use the dynamic on the controller as well, but what I do is set the adjustment curve down to -2, so all this does is just soften the curve slightly, so it reduces the effect of it on the controller, and the dead zone adjustment is set to 0%. Then we move over to trigger dead zones. So this is slightly less important if you've set this in game, but it's still worth doing just in case you jump over to other games. You want to make sure the triggers are as snappy as possible, and to do that you want to go from 0 to 1. So this does go all the way up to 99 or 100, but you want to make sure it's down to 1, so you need the least amount of input for those triggers to fire. Then obviously same with in-game, you want to make sure that the vibration intensity and the trigger effect intensities are both turned off, because they're just going to make your aim proper whiffy. Hopefully you found that video useful. Let me know down in the comments below if there's anything that you do differently, and have you been around with Warzone for the last 5 years, or are you coming back after a few years off to see what Verdansk looks like in 2025? If you are new around here, then make sure you subscribe with notifications on, because I upload all things Warzone, whether that's the settings videos, tips and tricks on how to complete the limited time events, and some random cool gameplays. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.